2021. And today is Monday, in which we will spend our time with questions and answers about Spiritism. Therefore, if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section and I will attempt to answer them. I also have a list of questions that people have sent me, and I can go through those while people have maybe not put information in the comment section yet. But before I begin, we are talking about Spiritism, and Spiritism was codified by Allan Kardec. And if you look at my title page here, I have his main book that Allan Kardec codified, 1019 Questions, the Spirits book, which I recommend everyone to read. Then the Mediums book, which is all about different spirits, being able to spot different spirits, understand them, what obsession means, a lot of information. And then the Gospel according to Spiritism, which I found very helpful. I don't know about other people, but when I was growing up and young, reading the Bible, a lot of the parables and passages kind of went by me and didn't make sense to me. But after I read Spiritism and then read the Gospel according to Spiritism, it made a lot more sense because all the backstory was filled in. Then the other thing I would do is my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, which I have down here on the picture, it's a short book, less than 100 pages. You can download it for free on PDF on my site, nwspiritism.com. And that, again, that's nwspiritism.com. You can download it for free. And of course, the Spirits book, the Mediums book, and the Gospel according to Spiritism, and his other two books, you can also just type in Allan Kardec space PDF, and you'll find all his books from the various sites for free on PDF. So there's plenty of information out there. I can also have the Spirits book on my YouTube channel, which if you look at the playlist of Spirits book, I go through each chapter, Audible. You can also download the Audible files in MP3 and the Audible format on my site, nwspiritism.com. You can download, listen to those, and save the chapter, save the place you're at your leisure. It's 2 files. It's a pretty big file, so I had to split it into 2. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, just please put them in there and I will attempt to answer them. There we go. I minimized the wrong place there. Hopefully you can hear me. Sometimes if I minimize and I'm not there, yeah, it looks like it's still on. So let me know in the comment section if you can't hear me any longer, because one time I minimized myself accidentally and then the microphone didn't seem to go on for people. So if you're there, please let me know if you can hear me or not. Okay, let's show some of the questions we had from previous people talking to me and asking questions. So we did a little bit of these questions before on, do I always reincarnate on Earth? And we answered that in our last episode. Now let's go, how can more spirits appear when there hasn't been that many people on Earth in the past? And I find this an intriguing question, and I actually thought this way too, because what I had considered Earth to be is Earth-centric, and the people that were created here stayed here. And even if you believe in reincarnation, that you just reincarnated on the same planet over and over again, and there was a finite number of spirits in and around Earth that you could draw the population from. And that I found out from the Spirits book and from other Spiritist writings is not the case. So let's talk about this. One is that spirits can come from many planets, and spirits who incarnated on Earth, let's say this time, your next life or in your previous lives, you could have been on different planets. So you could be on a planet across the galaxy, and and who knows? And you would have because what happens is the spirit world sends you to the planet where it's best fitted for you to learn. And if so, therefore, if you're on a planet, now you'll still be in a human-like body. It won't be exactly the same. I do know there's been writings about pretty big humans, pretty kind of far off, but mostly we're all some sort of humanoid looking type person that's adapted to the environment of whatever planet we're on. So therefore, spirits, there can be more spirits that come from other planets. Spirits on Earth, let's say we we have a depopulation event of some sort. We lose a couple billion. Well, those people, and we only have people are reincarnating on this at a smaller rate, and those people need to reincarnate. They can be sent to other planets. Now, the one question is the number of spirits is always increasing. There's always new spirits. So there's planets like Earth that was a primitive planet. We're now a planet of atonement. We are going to become a planet of regeneration. And so there's this all number of planets, and it's like elementary school, middle or junior high, whatever they call, and then there's high school, and then they go to college, and there's all these in your local community. There's this whole network of schools, and it's the same thing with planets. When you incarnate, there's this network of planets at different levels that you go to learn different things, right? A primitive planet, you're just starting out primitive, you're just getting in touch that you even have a conscience. On our planet of atonement, you start paying for your past wrongs, which is why there's so much chaos and disorder in the world. So therefore, and then you go to a planet of regeneration, which the Earth is now starting to transition to. It's going to, how long that's going to take, I don't know. My guess is about 1,000 years. Other people think a lot less, where we won't have inferior spirits around us, but right now they still are. But in your trials and tribulations will be a lot less severe, and it'll be more consultorial with your spirit mentors because you'll communicate more with the spirit world, and it will be more different ways of research and development and pursuing different areas of knowledge that you didn't have in the past. So I hope that answers that question. So the next one is, do I have to reincarnate? I don't want to. I get this a lot. And I understand that. It makes total sense to me because people have gone through pretty harsh lives. And the answer is, it depends. If you were a immature spirit and you were immature, you were a criminal on Earth, you were exceedingly materialistic, like a miser, or you robbed people even through like a business, not at the gunpoint, let's say, but you cheated people and you took advantage of your of things, or you were a powerful politician or dictator, then you would probably end up in the lower zone or the dark abyss. Now, the lower zone is on the crust of the earth up to the lowest levels of heaven. And the dark abyss is below the crust of the earth, if you want to put it in a geographical location. And there is, you could call the dark abyss as a purgatory. Some people call it a hell, but then there is no such thing as hell in Spiritism, because no one is sent to eternal punishment, and it's not true. There is no such thing really as punishment. There is education, and people are put there because they're there with others, people like them, so they can learn what it's like to be with people like them. It's kind of the mirror side of the golden rule, right? Others will treat you as you have treated others, and that's what happens when you pass over and you're not such a nice person. Now, these people really don't have much of a choice and to incarnate once again. They will have an irresistible urge to go to their assigned location, and they will then merge, right? And they'll merge right at the time of conception. In fact, even I've seen scientific studies where they say that there's like a little bright light that happens, and it may be an electrical discharge or whatever, what they think it is, but it is at the time of conception. that soul will meld with that, what, one cell, two cell, whatever it is, embryo. It will meld that. Now, you think, well, how can that be? But Andre Louise has described where they had the spirit on top of the mother, and the spirit just kept shrinking itself down. So it became completely attached and part of the embryo. So it's just like what we see um, with the spirit and the paraspirit. Let me bring this up. I always like to bring this picture up because I think it shows so well. So imagine that little embryo in the mother's body, and that spirit, which is right now the spirit and the paraspirit. The paraspirit will mold itself all the way down into the very few celled embryo, and it will then help that embryo, and it will affect that embryo. So it's not just genetic DNA code that will be that controls what a person looks like. They will also, depending on the level, the spiritual level of the spirit, it will affect the embryo, and also depending on the level of the spirit, there will be spirit helpers that can actually make small modifications, or I don't know, maybe major modifications to the DNA. One of the examples in one of the books by Andre Louise, Psychographed by Chico Xavier, was they said that, let's say there's a surgeon, they would change the DNA to make the person steadier and have a more excellent eyesight. Was even like all these things to help the surgeon become successful. So these things are done in that time. So the paraspirit is completely absorbed into or covers and connected to every cell of the embryo, and it is still connected to every cell of when you become an adult. And then, of course, as the embryo grows, it becomes more and more complex, and that's when the systems start breaking into the different force centers that they call in Spiritism, and they call them chakras, and they correspond. The heart, the splenic chakras, and these chakras um, are also seconded by Spiritism, that the paraspirit will control these centers, which makes sense because the paraspirit has probably modules that will control, let's say, the heart chakra, and within the heart chakra, there's all these different cells because it's the paraspirit's connected to every cell of your body, and that's what throws off. So when you are stressed, and stress could be caused by going against your conscience or just normal life, that's when you have an opening for cells to become, maybe cancerous, or um, sickness to creep in because you're stressed and your perispirit isn't controlling these things as well as it should. And that's why you need to be calm and cool and do things that follow your conscience, and you'll be much healthier. And there's actually been studies saying that uh, spiritual people are healthier than non-spiritual people. Okay, let's go back to the question. Now, for those who are not in the lower zone, but before I forget, the lower zone and the dark abyss, so they are just assigned a body and they go to that. They have, sometimes they may be given a little bit of input, but mostly not. Now, if you are in one of the levels of heaven, of course, free will is always respected uh, as far as your decisions. So, in your levels of heaven, you can decide that you do not want to reincarnate, and you can sit at that level, whatever level of heaven you're at, until you wish to. Now, what will happen is that you will not probably, I'm sure there's exceptions, that you will not rise in the different levels of heaven. Now, the spirits of talking to the Reverend G. Val Owen said there's 10 levels of heaven. And they said that other people say different levels, like 7 or 3, but it's just roughly there's of different levels of that you go as you advance spiritually. You become brighter, meaning you have more energy and less matter. You're given more tools in your toolbox, and you can connect to the universal database. You have more power to create and guide things. So so that means you're going to lose that opportunity to be of more service to others. But that is up to you. So you don't have to. But what happens is the spirit world will arrange for you to go on excursions into higher levels. Someone will go with you. You can see, oh, well, I want to be there. It's like taking your your freshman in high school child or sophomore, taking them to the college campuses and saying, yeah, this, if you want to go to college, this is what it looks like. If you don't, that's fine too. But you're giving them a vision of the future, which will either go for or not. So I hope that explains that question. Oop, let me there we go. Okay, let's go to the next one. Will I see my loved ones in heaven? Now, the answer is most probably yes. I am pretty sure you will see your loved ones in heaven. And that will be of great comfort to you. When I did a whole series on violets on the window, the spirit Patricia, she was met in heaven by her aunt, and of course her aunt looked younger. And then other relatives would come in, and your relatives. It's just like when we reincarnate, you tend to reincarnate in family groups. So it's not like you have 18 different fathers and mothers coming in. It's might be some exceptions to that, but usually that one that you've done the majority of times, or there may be exceptions, but that will come and see you, your father and your mother, your grandfather and grandmothers on either side, aunts and uncles, people that have passed away before you. They will see you when uh, they're ready. So the answer is yes, you should be able to see your loved ones in heaven. It may take time. There was in my books, Heaven and Below, I talk about a spirit was telling the Reverend Jivaon of this man who died, and he was one of the lower levels of heaven, and he was walking through, and he could kind of waiting to see if someone would meet him, and he was being followed by a spirit that wanted to help him, but he knew it wasn't ready. And then the spirit, as he went by, he saw this other guy kind of standing there, and the spirit mentally sent messages to him to stop him and ask him. And therefore, he said, "Can I help you?" And the guy had just gotten to heaven and goes, "Well, yeah, I've gone around here, and everyone's so nice and wonderful, but I thought I'd see my friends." And he goes, "Well," he goes, your friends have tried to see you, but you weren't ready to see them." And this happens a lot, is that the person that just came into heaven wasn't spiritually advanced enough to be able to detect the help of his friends. And of course, that happens a lot with people who are in the lower zone after they die, and they can't. In fact, even Andre Louise in the book No Solar, when he was in the lower zone for 8 years, he did not know that his mother tried to visit him, but he never noticed her because he wasn't spiritually advanced enough to even detect the presence of the spirit. And sometimes they even try and make themselves more dense, but even that doesn't work because you're not ready for it. So it may take a while to see your loved ones in heaven, but it will occur. Now, the other ones I get, and I hear this with, I love hearing the different prophets on YouTube and so forth. They say, well, everyone gets a mansion in heaven. Well, probably eventually you do, because as you rise in heaven, you make your own abode, you make your own place. But when you're in the lower levels of heaven, you may just get a room in a mansion, or you may get a room in a bungalow, or a room more in some sort of like dorm or something like that. You don't necessarily get a mansion. It takes time. It takes that you earn that to rise into the spiritual. uh, hierarchy. So think about this. So in the book No Solar, Andre Luis comes. It's a great movie, by the way. It's also called Astral City. You can buy that on Amazon, I'm pretty sure, or rent it. And you can also just No Solar, Nosso, Lar, Lar, means our home in Portuguese. You can buy the book too. And it's a great book and it's a great movie. But when he got there, he actually stayed in a room of a friend of his, and one of the medical assistants that helped him. And they had a little bungalow, nice, modest bungalow. Now, this is at a lower level of heaven. As you get higher and higher in heaven, what happens is that the houses and the architecture become grander and grander. Now, why is that? Because the spirits on the lower levels usually are living in houses that were created by spirits from higher levels that would create those houses and those government offices or whatever they were with their minds. But as you go higher and higher, you learn, and this is part of learning, right? You're always learning, or you're always doing something in heaven. And so part of this is you're learning, and then you learn how to fashion things through your mind. The Reverend G. Val Owen's mother talked to him about the time that she and a group of spirits were sitting there learning how to create with their mind, and they were given the task of creating a statue of an elephant. And there were like 5 or 6 of them, and they started to create the statue of an elephant. And she said we all laughed, because if you don't think we don't laugh in heaven, you're wrong. We laughed because we made this statue, and it was kind of half real elephant, half statue elephant. It was kind of Indian, African elephant, and some woolly mammoth type, right? And because we knew we had to work together first beforehand. And what it was is when people got together and they learned to modify universal fluid with their willpower, with their mind, with their faith, right? Because faith is measurable in heaven. And then they were also showing this group of dials and kind of measurements. And what they found out is that it showed what was the vibration and mixture. I don't know exactly what it was, but it kind of showed them what kind of mixture of universal fluid it was as how they created that elephant. Then they tried to create like a fruit tree, and they did that better. So those are all things that then you learn, and you get higher and higher, and you learn, and you become members of teams that will create whole buildings, that create mountains, lakes. And when Jesus said faith moves mountains, he meant it literally. This is what's so great when you understand Spiritism. And when Jesus said some things, he said, and you find out, it goes, oh, he meant that literally, because faith does move mountains. Maybe not for us here on earth, because we're stuck in this objective world. But if you were outside of that and you were a high spirit, yes, you could certainly move mountains. Very interesting. Let me change this one. I'm getting through these quick. Now, this is another one I get. Do I eat food in heaven? Well, it depends on the level. When you are at a very low level of heaven, or you're in the lower zone, you still have that urge to eat food. But you go on and you learn that you don't need to. You absorb the sunlight, you absorb the nutrients in water, and you grow out of that. And I know some people that say, well, I don't want to go to heaven if I can't eat food, because that's one of their great pleasures in life. And what I tell them is that yes, that is a pleasure in life. But just like when you were a child and you had some pleasures, as you grew up, you had other pleasures, and those pleasures as a child grew less important, and you forgot about them. It's the same thing in heaven. It's a pleasure that will soon be covered by more immense and wonderful pleasures, and therefore you won't care about eating food in heaven, and it won't be necessary, because you get your nutrients from the air and the water. Now, why is that? Well, if you look at on Earth, we are bound by gravity, and we need a lot of food just to walk, just to live, because we have this atmospheric pressure upon us. Where when you're in heaven, we're more in this ethereal body, this paraspirit, and the amount of energy it takes to make that body self-sufficient is immensely less, and therefore you do not need that. So I hope that answers that. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay. Are there pets in heaven? Well, this is a this is an important one, and people are very interested in this one. And the answer is yes, there are pets in heaven. Is anyone having difficulty in the transmission? Because I'm seeing some problems in transmission. Can anyone write me saying if they can hear me and see if I'm moving? Because I'm getting very low quality of network. Let me check this out real quick because something's happening. I'm not quite sure what is. Okay. I might get some echo here, but I just want to see. I'll put these on and see if I can hear myself. Okay. Okay, it's working. I just wanted to make sure that it was still on and functioning. What? Yep. Okay. Thanks. It says you were okay. I'm just very careful on that one because sometimes I ramble on and say, "Well, I can't hear you." Okay. Now, are there pets in heaven? Of course, yes, there are. In fact, Chico Xavier was sitting next to this woman. She had like a little lapdog on her lap, and he said, "Do you know?" He says, "How long have you had that pet?" She goes, "Oh, 2, 3 years." He goes, "No, you've had that pet for 500 years. That pet has followed you in life after life," which is interesting. And there's also I've read other books where uh, someone died, and of course, then their pet shows up and goes, because the pet's passed on a while ago, and then that pet shows up and wants to be with them, and so the really wonderful thing in heaven is that you can peer into their mind, and this one spirit wrote about peering into his dog's mind, and he could see the dog thinking about running through the fields like chasing butterflies and stuff, right? Which makes sense, and so that would be very interesting. So yes, there are pets in heaven. There are animals, all sorts of animals in heaven. The predators like tigers and lions and bears, they're in heaven, but they don't bother people because they have no instinct of needing to eat. Right? They know they only eat when they're hungry, unlike us. And so yes, there's many animals. I've never heard of any bugs in heaven, which would be nice if there's not that. So I've never heard of that. So they're probably too low, and they're probably put somewhere else temporarily till they put them back into these lower life forms. But yes, there are pets in heaven, and they may come with you time after time. And in more advanced planets, the animals are also more advanced. In fact, they say that when Earth becomes a planet of regeneration, and then the next step, it is the animals can communicate more. They're at a higher level. They live longer, just like we live longer, and so there's a lot of advancement even for pets. So hopefully that's good news for a lot of people, because people, and I, of course, I do. There's one dog, Alex, who was a Sheltie, who I would love to see in heaven. It was just like the best Sheltie ever. Um, so that would be great. Okay, now the next one is: do you see God in heaven? Now, this is a tough one because when I look at these different prophets or hear these different prophets speak, they always say, "Well, God spoke to me, right, and said this and that." Well, Spiritism says really, well, first, God is in us. We're connected to God. God gives us our conscience, uh, and which is the set of divine laws. But does God talk to us individually? I have never read that anywhere in spiritualist literature. And in fact, what spirits have said, and I talk about this in my in actually two books. Let me bring that up. Hold on one second. Here we go. Make sure I hide the right thing. I talk about this in my book, The Spirit Realm. What is heaven? What is hell? Who is God? Right? What does that mean? That what spirits say is that we don't know God any more than you know God. In fact, Allan Kardec says, when in his book, The Spirit's Book, the spirits tell them, you cannot comprehend God. You're not advanced enough. And if you want to start to understand, just begin to understand God, you need to understand Jesus Christ. So I talk about God in this book. I also talk about God in my book, Heaven and Below, which goes in more detail of what heaven is, what the lower zone, what the dark abyss is, and who is Jesus Christ, which is Jesus Christ. Just um, what a person! He's so much more than the wonderful carpenter that a lot of people just think of. When they think of him, he's the leader, the CEO, the governor of our planet. Is all the ministers reporting to him. The people who've been into this planet. It always kind of makes me laugh when I hear that. Oh, the Christians took this ritual and took this saying from this religion, from Zoroaster's, and Buddhism took this from something else. And but when you think of why are the messages like the Golden Rule is familiar in many religions, some variation of it. Reincarnation is very familiar in many religions. Is because they're all sent by the same person. Jesus Christ sent Socrates 400 years before Jesus came, sent Buddha, sent Lao Tzu, sent Confucius, all these, sent Zoroaster. He sent all these people to tell us time and time again the road we should be on. And therefore, it's wonderful that we have this message. Of course, each message was slightly altered according to the advancement of the culture and technology at the time. That's why the Old Testament's different than the New Testament. And so therefore, it is that something that is universal, and that's because it's all sent to us from Jesus. And so therefore, you really want to see, if you want to talk about who is in charge, right, and who really does answer our prayers in an immediate basis, right? We all belong to God, of course, and God's very important. But it's in the person who really is watching out for each of us individually and sending his ministers and legions of angels to watch out over us is Jesus Christ. And that's why everyone will understand eventually that Jesus is the leader of our planet and that we owe, everything to him. He helped, he's a part of the band of angels to help to create the planet. He was part of the group that, formed the moon, guided the planet from, a ball of fire kind of to all the different ages, dinosaurs, everything, and started the humans so they could put in free-willed souls into them. And it started with primitive planet, and now hopefully we're moving to a planet of regeneration. So that's important. So therefore, the answer to that question then is no, you don't see the person God, but you feel the presence all around you. And I know some people say, well, you can, if you have ears to hear and eyes to see, you should feel the presence of God all around you on earth. And there's truth to that. But you see the divine imprint everywhere when you're in the spirit world. It's right at you. I've read where people will see Jesus coming and with his ministers, and he will talk to people, and he will send messages to people and have great ceremonies, and it will just be magnificent things. And every time, what this one spirit says, it says, I've seen Jesus quite a few times. He always appears a little bit different, but you know who it is because he has this combination of commanding authority and just utter love. And it says it's just unbelievable, and you just feel this love. And in fact, one one person said they were in this great hallway, and Jesus was coming in the middle of the hallway, and for each person he was given like a little I think I forgot what it was, like a little posy or daisy, and he gave you the daisy, and the other person touched the flower, right, to take it, and at that moment he could feel Jesus, and then also, and you could just feel like he just loved you. And also, these said, like, and if there was a problem that was bothering me for this long time and I couldn't figure it out, all of a sudden I knew it. And then afterwards, when I talked to people, other people said they felt the same way. They felt like I was something special to Jesus, to Christ, and that I was helped in some way. And then he said, now, the reason that we touched the flower and we didn't touch Jesus is that Christ had so much energy that if we touched him, we could have been like blown away. Which, when you think about it, and you think about Jesus on earth, and that people just like the one woman who was bleeding and touched his garment, and he looked and he goes, who touched my garment?" Right? Because he could feel it. This shows you the effect of a high spirit on earth, of how much power this wonderful person had, um, and how we could actually do these. Well, we say what they say are miracles, but what Spiritism says, they're only miracles because you don't understand them, and there's an explanation for everything. And the explanation is Christ had that much. He still had this huge spiritual power, even when he was locked into a physical body, and he had legions of spirits around him, helping him and doing everything he could to help people who were around him. So that was, I thought, was very interesting, that even in heaven, that people are just amazed at the power and grandeur of Jesus. And they describe him wearing a tunic, right? He'll wear a crown. He'll have a rubies, um, like a red ruby on his belt, that signifies his communications upward to God, up to the higher levels of the spiritual universe. So what I think we need to take away from this is, do you see God in heaven? Is it's not that the spirit world is not this ethereal, uh, you know, paradise of, you sit back and you do nothing, and it's clouds, and it's kind of amorphous and non-distinct. I think that it's very distinct, and I think that it's organized, and it's organized kind of as organized much better than the Earth is, but it's a lot of things in parallel to the Earth that you don't see, and I think that's important to note, is that the customs and the organization and the architecture is superior, but it's also organized kind of how we would feel familiar. So when you die, you're not taken to some place that, what the heck is this? No, it can be, um, it is still familiar, because it's just like educating any student. You don't take them from first grade to the end of high school because they go, oh, no, you take them to second grade and third grade. Same thing happens in the spirit universe. Okay, got a question here. Gabrielle, can your spirit be destroyed literally or ripped apart literally? If so, what would happen to you mentally if that happened? And the answer is, you are immortal. So let's take this from uh, a couple of different ways. One is, if you're in a physical body and you're in some accident and it destroys your brain, because I always had this fear, right? if someone like shot me in the head and I became severely disabled, could barely think and function, what would I be in heaven? Well, the answer is your spirit is still there, and you are disabled on the earth in your physical body, but you're perfectly normal. In fact, so I've read in spirits books um, by spiritist mediums that when you see someone severely disabled, say a little prayer to them because they have a hard trial on earth. Now, as your spirit can be commanded by, if you're like in the lower zones or you're in the dark abyss, which is a type of hell, you can be dominated by wills, but no, you cannot be literally destroyed. You can be are ripped apart. You are, think of it as you're this spirit, you're this encapsulations of logic, and they'll call them like personalities. Each spirit's a personality, and that's why we go through all this. Is we have unique personalities. You are this unique personality. That means they'd have to destroy you, kind of the whole logic of you. And but the database is so big. If somehow they can destroy the logic of you, I'm sure it's backed up somewhere. So no, you can never be destroyed. You are immortal. And the next question is, where do dark spirits or spirits who want pleasure and do bad things to other spirits go when they die and continue to do this in the spirit realm? Yeah, so there's a lot of this. So if people who want pleasure and they do bad things to other people, they go to the lower zones or the dark abyss. And what they do then is they do terrible things to other people who were like them. In fact, you will read in different books like Memoirs of a Suicide. You'll read in the book Liberation, psychographed by Chico Xavier with Andre Luis, that these spirits who were like dictators and cruel will also go down there, and they'll still be dictators and cruel. They'll use the force of their mind to command other people. In fact, this one spirit I was reading about, he was in the city that kind of looked like Rome in ancient times, and the leader of it said he didn't say who it was, but it was some emperor. He didn't say who it was, but he had the Emperor Nero as his like personal slave, and he just like kept torturing Nero. I don't know why. So the poor guy. So they'll do bad things. They'll a spirit in the purgatory. They'll have spirits in different cities. They'll have armies. Right? Hell is organized. That also remember that there's no such thing as the devil. They're just inferior spirits. I mean, spiritually immature, not intellectually. Some of these are very smart that try to create chaos on earth. And I'll talk about that in a second, but let's just talk about in heaven. And there'll be cities, there'll be factions, even within cities, and they'll have big battles because that's what they like to do. And they will force some spirits to be in the shape of horses. So they'll have like cavalry attack each other and they'll fight each other. Of course, then people will think they're dead, but then they'll kind of wake up and they'll just go back and either be the slaves of the people who won or just go back to the city and be in another army. And they'll just do that over and over again. It's kind of a weird way of looking at Valhalla, right? Where you fight all the time. So, in some instances, depending on what you're reading. So, yes. So spirits, dark spirits, immature spirits, mean spirits go where other spirits are like them. Now, some of these people who are dictators, they are surprised that they are the ones taken advantage of because there are people there who have more dominant wills than they do. And they will be set upon people who they were mean to, and they will be punished and tortured over and over again until these guys either give up or one of the higher spirits comes and say, "Nah, it's enough. He's been punished enough," or they ask for, they want to go to the light. In fact, that's the I think the important thing to understand is the way the spirit world fights evil is they use evil to fight evil. They don't have some spirit come down there with a machine gun and kill all the bad spirits, because there's everyone becomes a good spirit someday. I would say all of us here, we've all been in this horrible place at some time in some way back previous life, and maybe not so way back previous life. We've been in these lower zones, hurting other people and being hurt ourselves. That's part of the learning process, because when you're in there, you go, "Oh, I don't like this lifestyle." And people are sarcastic, they're mean, I'm their slave, or I have to watch everyone all the time. It gets tiring and you don't like it anymore. Now, eventually you say, "Okay, I need help. Please, God, help." And they will, spirits will come and kind of lead you out and help you become more spiritually mature. Now, there are spirits down in the spirit world that love to take advantage of people on earth by obsessing them or by influencing them. There is, in this book, Memoirs of a Suicide, there is a spirit that was in the, like, a close building to where the spirit Camilo Branco was. And they had kept him there for 30 years because he was part of a gang that, when he died, and he was a horrible person. He would take advantage of women. He would, you know, uh, tell them all the promises in the world, and then just drop them in horrible circumstances. And then when he died, and he also was horrible to his mother and father. When he died, he started this gang of spirits. They would go up and they would cause men and women, just for the fun of it, to commit suicide. And when they committed suicide, then they'd use them as their slave down in the spirit world. So, yes, they still do bad things to other spirits. And you go, "Well, why does God allow this?" Well, there's always reasons. Those people that they influence, they may have done something bad themselves. If they were very strong spiritually, it wouldn't have made any difference. But I'm sure there was a reason. There's reasons for all this. And so they let that happen. But then eventually they said, "No, you've done enough." And they put this guy kind of in this place, and they were trying to convince him, like, this is not the way to be. You need to change your attitude. And therefore they will, they kept him in there like 35 years, trying to convince him not to. And I don't know what the end result was. But a lot of times I think is, so you think, well, how do you break that if the guy is just want to do evil all the time? And I believe the way it's done is, when you read different books by different spiritist authors, and with communication by different spirits, you read there's a lot about children in heaven. And so why have children in heaven? Because, a higher spirit, even if they die as a child, they die and then they become an adult. And because they remember their past lives and they're mature. But then you have this whole other group of children spirits, and they kind of grow up as they mature, and they grow up to be an adult spirit. So why is that? Because they must have had previous lives. Well, I believe that is because for some of these people, they've had to, like, reboot, and they've had to say, okay, their personality just went off on the wrong track, and we need to get them back on the right track, and then we'll incarnate them again, and we'll actually kind of block the memory of their previous lives, and we'll kind of start over. Okay. I hope that helps. And then the next question by Gabrielle is, what is it like to be another spirit's slave? So what I've read in these books like Liberation and these other books that I've been going over on Tuesday nights when they've gone in there is they can do anything they want to you. In fact, in the book called Paul and Albert, and I actually have, I talk about that in my book, Heaven and Below, Paul and Albert. So Paul was a doctor, and he's a very materialistic doctor. And when he died, he went to one of the lower zones. And because he didn't, and as when he first died, this kind of angel, this guardian angel, met him, said, "You're here because you didn't really care about your patients. You may have thought you did, but you cared more about the money." And you can either learn from this or go through, more years of hassle and learn, but you'll be back eventually. So of course the doctor's very obstinate, right? And he went down further and further. Well, he came upon this place where three people were on stage giving a demonstration, and he was like in the back of the audience, and this one guy says, "Oh, you come here." So immediately he made this guy his slave because he dominated through his will. And the doctor went up there. They stripped him, tied him to this rock. And then they said, okay, we're going to do a lecture on anatomy. And then they would talk about the doctor's past lives and everything bad he did. But then when they talked about, let's say, the heart, they take a scalpel and cut his flesh and take the heart out. There's no blood. And then they take the liver out, right? And so this is what it's like being another spiritual life. These people are cruel, and they do cruelty for cruelty's sake because that's the kind of the lane they're in at that point in time. So then when they were done with him, they threw him into a cave. Now, here's this guy. He's not bleeding, and all his organs are all over the place. So how can that be? Well, in his mind, his organs are all over the place. But your body is your paraspirit, and your body cannot be destroyed, but you can think it is, and you can think you have pain when they stab you with these things. But when he came to in the cave, he was all back again because his spirit thought of himself as the paraspirit, and his body was back where it was. And he goes, "Oh, that was horrible." And then this woman came in and said, "Oh, you need to get out of here." He goes, "Why?" Because I'll, hopefully they won't keep doing that to me. He goes, "No, they will. You're their slave now. They'll just torture you for fun's sake, and it will go on and on until they may get tired of it, but who knows?" So now there's another way of being a slave. There's city in purgatory, and they were like a mine, and they had all these slaves digging for mine because remember, hell or purgatory is organized. There's cities, there's warlords, there's fights. They make things, and they're making like swords and stuff, and they had all these slaves that were toiling away, and probably because they had they made other people toil away. Now they were eventually rescued. There's this whole story about that, and I talk about that in my books. But they were rescued by this band of spirits who went down there and said, "No, okay, you guys, you've had enough torture. You can come with us." It's very interesting because the boss of the city didn't like it, and he actually tried to stop him. And then one of the spirits from level of heaven just touched his sword, and his sword just went down like a wet noodle. And he just knew that a higher spirit, there's no contest. When a higher spirit talks to any or encounters any lower spirit in the lower zone or the dark abyss, there's no contest. You're like a 3-year-old against an adult. That's just not going to happen because they have such great willpower and such power. But that's what it's like to be another spirit slave. It's not pleasant. And I have one more example. This was from Reverend G. Owen's mother, who talked about this one woman who has been trying to find her husband. And finally, they said, "Oh, your husband's finally coming home." And what they asked kind of like the mother of the group, so where was he? Well, he was a slave to this warlord in hell who just liked torturing him because of what he'd done to him before. And then he kept asking, "Can I go?" And he said, no, you can't go anywhere. But then finally, and then this woman said, "Look, even in the most evil of people, there's no such thing as all evil or all good. Everyone is a mixture." And in this warlord who you think could be all evil, there was a spark of goodness saying, "Okay, I'm going to let him go." And they let this guy go. And he also said, "Look, you're going to go, but it's going to be very painful because as a spirit rises from out of these lower zones into heaven. It's very painful because you're going through one level of that and you're like burning off everything you've done wrong. It's extremely painful experience. And I've read that in multiple books from different spirits and even not spiritist writers, spiritist mediums, I should say, that it's extremely painful when you've been down there and done so many things wrong that you experience these horrible feelings because then these memories come up to you of what you've done in the past, the errors you've made, the wrongs you have performed, and it's just extremely painful, but you can get through it. So they let him go, and then his wife met him. So this is I hope that answers that question. Okay. Just as I'm getting down to the end of the hour. So if you're interested in what I've been talking about, I have it. I have I have all my books on my site, nwspiritism.com. It's on the right hand navigation, and they're in Kindle and paperback. Many of them are in Audible. So if you like books like that, I have, and of course, I have my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, free for PDF. But again, I think if you want to read a kind of a synopsis of everything, of what the spirit realm is, what is heaven, what is the lower zone, what is the spirit, because you really need to understand what you are. Because once you understand where you are and what you are, you'll understand why you go through sometimes really tough trials and episodes here on earth, dramatic episodes, things, and then why things that seem unfair to you or to your relatives or people you know, like why did this great guy have to go through this? Well, probably because of some previous life error that he or she committed. So I hope this has helped everyone. I would recommend for you to explore more because the more you explore, the more you understand, more things like then you just kind of look at yourself from this 10,000 foot level and you kind of laugh at the things that happen to you. It's like, oh, okay, what did I do to deserve this? And it's like, okay, oh, I got that lesson. Thank you, Lord. That's what my wife and I do. It's like when someone, does something to us, or we have workmen like just do a terrible job. We go, oh, okay, what was that about? So you just have to laugh at it, and you take the trials and tribulation as they come, and say, "Thank you for giving me that, and it's something I want to do in my next life. And if you want your next life better, be as good as you can in this life." Anyway, I want to say thank you for everyone coming here, and God bless.